Welcome to 122 and an eighth. This is the Cowabunga Chronicles. I am your resident sewer rat, Chris, joined by
Nolan.
And we are here to explore the sewers of the TMNT IDW collection. This is Volume 3, Leonardo. And wow, was it about Leonardo?
It was.
Right? The whole thing was
Leonardo.
just all Leonardo.
Yeah.
No Krang.
No Krang,
You could also call this whole volume "Where's Krang?"
Yeah.
What is he up to? And I'm probably going to say that about 6 or 7 times because that's all I kept thinking was "Where is Krang?" what is he just licking his wounds on on Utram or something like?
He's bathing.
Yeah, that's where we left him, right? Yes, that's right. Awesome. So we've started off, I think our previous episode, just first reactions.
My reaction to this volume is sort of all over the place. I went from not really liking it to not really liking it to by the end really liking it.
There's definitely some weird spots to me that felt a little all over the place. I think things definitely paid off that were even built in like volume 1.
Yeah.
I found myself questioning, like, is that length of a payoff okay? I don't know. But then I thought about the end of this volume is only issue 27, like proper. So if I were reading just the single issues and ignoring everything else, which I think would be very difficult in a lot of ways, maybe it's not so long to pay it off in that regard. So I don't know. I went back and forth on like the payoff of things, but yes, there were some amazing storylines, great high points, some little weird decisions that I was like, this is kind of odd. We'll get to those. But overall, I'm pumped for volume 4. I gotta say,
this is almost. It seems like an extreme thing. It's almost the highest example of, or the most extreme example of, I cannot imagine reading the main issues without the one-shots.
Yeah, considering one of them just introduces a whole character that you've never heard of.
Yeah.
Right?
And, I mean, one has a character's motivation completely turn.
Right.
Alopex.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
So it's just like, without those...
I mean, Hun. I mean, who is that? I've never heard of Hun before.
I had no clue who that was.
Right? So,
it made the setup in the issue before super random.
Yeah.
Like, we'll get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's hop right into this annual. We've talked about this a couple times where I started reading that annual and I was really excited to hop right back into like, let's chase Krang down. Let's kick his ass. Like this is, let's do it. And that is not what we found in the annual.
Yeah.
And not only that, I was like, when does this annual end? Like it just kept flipping pages. Now I will say I've had a couple of like short film ideas and things that deal with this idea. But this idea of convergence, like that there's one central event that happens and you tell 5 different stories that arrive at that event, that's kind of a cool concept to me personally. So it was kind of interesting to see that kind of written out in this way. And so we're talking about a car crash that was caused by Casey's bat, losing his bat, while Casey and Raph were kind of training on their own. And so they tell this the story of this car crash leading up to it and just after it from a couple of different viewpoints. And I kind of, in my outline here, I kind of just skipped to, it ends up being that there's a briefcase that's lost and they end up trapped in a bar, the Scarborough, which ends up being kind of a central point, like location, rather. They like a recurring location. I think that's the better way to put it.
Yeah.
A recurring location throughout this volume. They're trapped in this bar, not sure what to do about these diamonds. There's a crooked cop that shows up that needs to find the diamonds. And it's when those French ninjas, the Savantes, which we got introduced to in the last volume, and maybe even volume 1 a little bit, and you had no clue who they were or why they were ninjas or anything. They're after the diamonds. And Casey and Raph have this guilt about causing this car crash. And they want to end up making sure that everybody ends up being safe. And they feel responsible for that mess, ultimately. I thought it was actually kind of funny that Raph and Casey end up on the news and being spotted by the turtles.
Yeah.
And so Splinter sends the rest of the turtles to find them. And then you find out that Karai and Shredder say that these diamonds are a tribute from the Savantes. And so Karai is sent after them. So now you find everyone kind of converging on these diamonds. And you also find out that Angel, the leader of the Purple Dragons, who had shown up previously, her father owns the Scarab Bray, which I think I'm spelling that right. Two Scotsmen escape the bar with the diamonds. Raph and Casey follow them to keep them safe. And that's where they're confronted by both the Savantes and the Foot. And then, of course, the other brothers show up. It's at this point the SWAT actually shows up in the area, and they all kind of vanish, and Casey disperses the diamonds across the dock so nobody can get them. That is the highest level outline that I could probably put. There are so many more details, and the art is all done by Kevin Eastman, the original creator, which, on a personal note, I am excited to meet in person at the 40th anniversary Minicon in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, coming up. I've always enjoyed his art. This issue, though, we kind of talked right before hitting record here that a lot happened and a lot didn't happen all at the same time.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I didn't talk much during your explanation because I don't really have that much to say about the issue. Yeah, a lot is going on, but at its core, it just felt like a super simple story that just wouldn't end.
Sure.
Like earlier you mentioned how you thought it was super long, and you had mentioned that to me a week prior or something, or in passing, and I was like, he doesn't read comics much, so maybe he just thought it was long or whatever, but it's just an annual, it'll be fine. And even when I was reading it, I was like, this is long. What? Like,
yeah.
It is ridiculously long. I shouldn't have just questioned it.
Underestimated.
Yeah.
I felt like when you watch a TV show and it goes on its season break and you go to the next season, that the first episode of that season is catching up with where all of our characters are at. And they did that. They caught up with all the characters and even the lesser known ones, and they introduced a couple more all at the same time. Which, kudos to them for like the jumping off point of this volume by all means. But it just felt like these almost like quick vignettes about each character. You didn't really spend a lot of time with one character.
And I personally didn't care about most of the characters we were following, so it just made the issue kind of a slog. Most of the time with these issues, I can read a couple at a time.
Right.
But this one I cut up into a few readings because I just wasn't super into it. Like, it's kind of important because it lays the groundwork for the eventual war that happens throughout the volume, but you meet a couple of characters who show up briefly later in the volume, but I don't know. Ultimately, this issue just felt kind of long, and I like the art, but for me, this art doesn't fit for this run.
Yeah, I did want to actually talk about the art for the rest of the run too. So you bring up a good point.
Because I just feel like it's Eastman, right?
Yes.
I just feel like his art does not fit with this run. It's not bad. It's good. It just feels a lot more stylized, and I don't know. For me, it just didn't work in this run.
Sure. And just one final note on the length. I just saw that it is 62 pages on its own right, and none of the other issues are like that.
Yeah, most annuals I've read are at most 48 pages in terms of just comics all around.
Sure.
It's usually a $5 issue as opposed to a $3.99.
Right.
Whatever. But
right. Awesome. Let's hop right into issue 21. Get going with the main line here.
Sort of an in-between issue.
Yes. Interesting moment, though, right? I mean, I liked the twist, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was fantastic. And so we catch up with the Turtles on the rooftops talking about how... And I actually thought that this first couple of pages were a little bit of a throwaway, but this line ends up being important and sets up the rest of this volume, that they sense that the city is more tense and that violent crime is up. It's not these low-level kind of petty crimes, right? And out of nowhere, they are attacked and overpowered by one mystery ninja. I'm calling him mystery ninja. You might say clown. Mikey calls him a clown. He breaks Donnie's bow staff. He overpowers the rest of them. He seems to know about them and Splinter's hideout, and he keeps on playing this kind of cat and mouse kind of thing with them, where he attacks them and then moves ahead of them. And so the Turtles are trying to lay chase and get to the church that they've been hiding out their lair to protect Splinter. They start off thinking that he's a foot soldier. You start to think that as the reader. They catch up and then realize that maybe his style is actually of the French ninjas, savates. And then he overpowers them and vanishes again. They catch up. He changes his style to Wing Chun, which I think is really interesting. Because Wing Chun is, that's very much like the Bruce Lee style, right? And not his only style, of course, but a lot of the Hollywood martial arts, there's Wing Chun in there. He overpowers again, says he's earned his right to face the master. They catch up at the church. They think he's inside, but he's not. They fight outside. He wins again. He breaks Leah's katanas. I thought that was super interesting to see. He breaks into the church. The Turtles still fighting to defend, which I actually really liked, to see their resolve to protect Splinter. I thought that was fantastic. We didn't have this thing that we had in the first volumes that were about them trying on their own and not working together. They seemed to be in unison through this fight. There wasn't that theme of having to come together. They had their last stand, and I love how this twist was happening. They said that the only way to their master is over their dead bodies, and it is revealed that this clown and ninja was actually Splinter all along, testing them. He explains that they have mastered their styles, but they must train harder and unlearn the things they've learned. And then the last page is important in that they are in Japan with Shredder, Karai, and the Foot, and Dr. Miller, that archaeologist that we left off in the end of Volume 2, and they find Kitsune. We'll end it right there. What are your thoughts?
I really like this issue a lot. I thought it was super fun, and I didn't see the twist coming at all.
At all.
Yeah.
I really did not either. And even as you look back at it, you would think like, oh, they would maybe lay hint or something like that in how he was drawn or something like that. And I didn't see any hints throughout that at all. So
it makes me wonder if the reason they chose, or they had Eastman do the art for this is because his art is so stylized
Sure.
that it made it easier for them to hide who the clown or whatever was.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. For sure. I can agree with that. Issue 22. This is part 1 of City Fall. So the City Fall saga goes through 22 to 27, I believe it is. I really enjoyed it. Actually, kind of bigger than all of the issues. I really enjoyed seeing the title, like City Fall Part 1, and the parts like within the cells of the comic. I thought that was really neat in each issue or part. They did that. This is also the first break from Eastman in this volume.
Does he? I don't think he does anything more.
I don't think so, but you do. What I really enjoyed too, by the way, is after you read the issue, you get the alternate cover, and it's usually the Eastman cover that you can see in there. And so I enjoy seeing that. This issue is the first one with the turtles are designed differently. And I'm going to be honest and go out on a limb and say I'm not super crazy about it. The slightly bigger bandanas that they wear, I think Mikey in particular looks a little younger than teenager at times. And this kind of carries throughout the rest of the issues. Just a little bit different style. Almost felt like the first time I saw like the Nickelodeon styled ones where I was just like, that's not what I'm used to, but okay. And of note, by the way, just for everyone listening at home, Nolan, I think you've heard this from me. I am no gatekeeper when it comes to the Turtles. Like, I love any Turtles story that you love, so to say. I might have my preferences and those kind of things, but the more Turtles, the better. I am not one to gatekeep or anything like that, but I did notice just a slight change in how they were stylized from previous volumes.
Yeah, I noticed it. I guess it didn't stand out to me as well, but I did notice something specifically with the Mikey.
That's what I was saying. Yeah. Mikey just looks a little younger compared to the others.
Yeah. It didn't bother me, but I do agree. Isn't he the youngest turtle, though?
I think he's supposed to be the youngest turtle.
So it kind of makes sense.
I'm okay with it. I guess all this to say, if I had a preference, I liked how they were stylized before, right? Not my preference here, but still, again, really well done.
Yeah, their heads are a bit more round, I think might be a big change. Because, you can even see on the cover in the first volume, Raph's had a little more shape to it, whereas Leo's is on this cover is a little more circular.
Yeah, and that combined with sort of there's a lot more bandana above their eyes, a little bit more, and so that those two things kind of combined, you can notice a stylized change. City Fall, though, we're on issue 22. Quick outline of 22. Shredder is explaining to Kitsune that the Sabates have remained stubborn as their rivals, and Shredder's determined to have them embrace their destiny. Raph and Casey are checking on Casey's father, drinking at the Scar Bray. There's that bar again, so to say. And this is a really important moment where Casey actually reveals the promise that he made to his mother, to Raphael, for him to understand at least a little bit more why he put up with so much for so long. And it's at this point very important. The Foot attack Raph and Casey, take them hostage. Raphael quickly awakens with Karai in the car. He breaks out, jumps off the bridge, and at that moment I was like, okay, that's the end of Raphael. But then I remembered he's a turtle and he'll be okay in the water. But I definitely had a moment where I was like, you're not supposed to be able to do that, right?
I feel like I haven't seen them utilize water like that in any of the versions of the Turtles
I haven't either. Yeah. I haven't either. And I think it was this issue that they do a little bit more. We'll get to that in just a moment. So we cut to Splinter training Leo, Donnie on security. Mikey is reading comics. I thought that was a great little touch there. And Raph barges in, telling them about them getting hostage, him breaking out. They need to save him. Raph and Leo argue over what to do, and Leo throws it in his face what happened last time. And I remember reading that and specifically writing this down. I think that's what's always annoyed me a little bit about Leonardo in a lot of iterations of the Turtles, is that if you are a leader, you wouldn't throw mistakes at people's faces like he does at times. And I've seen that you can see that in the movies, right? There's always this like, well, what happened last time, Raph? Like kind of thing going on. And that just always unnerved me a little bit, just always irked me.
Well, I think there could also be a couple of arguments of, one, he is still a teenager, so he's learning how to be a leader.
Right.
And it's not fully on the wrong, maybe how he goes about it is wrong, but I mean, learning from what happened last time is a good thing for a leader to do, but maybe not to, maybe his tone is just very teenager.
And it's very much always that tone with Raph specifically, right? Like, yeah. I think a little bit.
Well, Raph and Leo have always had sort of a back and forth, so it could it could just be a situation where.
You bring up a good point though with the teenager bit here. I think these three volumes so far have definitely leaned into them being teenagers more than, say, the old movies, right?
Yeah.
Where they were once teenagers and now they feel like they're a bit older, a bit more mature. Like you would almost put like I feel like you would put the Turtles 1, 2, and 3 movies sort of in like mid-20s, let's say, of maturity-wise. Whereas this does feel a little bit more like mid-teens, late teens kind of maturity in some regard.
Well, I feel like with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the teenage part is more of a necessity than than something that is followed.
Sure.
Because, I mean, it's iconically Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so they're not going to start calling it Mutant Ninja Turtles or Adult Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
I'm laughing at that because I think SNL did a parody called Middle-Aged Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I don't know if you've seen this at all.
I don't think so.
It's absolutely hilarious. You should definitely look it up. If you're listening at home, highly recommend it. But definitely for middle-aged adults. But it's just that what it looks like in old age as turtles. But to your point, again, that was the whole point of Mutant Mayhem, was that they were really leaning into the teenage bit.
I almost felt like with Mutant Mayhem, though, going on a bit of a tangent, I really liked the movie, but they felt a little bit more like kids than teenagers. I mean, maybe going from kid to teenager, but
sure. And I would take that I would take that as being okay, only because the series in general has swayed so far the other way that you never really saw it. And so it's finding some balance there.
It didn't bother me. It's just more of an observation.
No,
anyway,
I could agree. Yes.
We can get back to the book.
Yeah. We did pick a decent spot, though, to go on that tangent because, Leo throws that into space about what to do, what happened last time. We cut to Karai and Alapex waiting at the dock. And the team, the gang arrives in advance. April stays behind. Just as Raph leaves, Angel is leaving the bar and sees Raphael. Very important. Raph, Leo, Splinter go up on the building tops, and Raph wants to jump in, and Casey's hurt. He's not doing well. And we mentioned it before, not utilizing the water. Well, Mikey and Donnie are swimming in as a kind of amphibious attack, so to say. I think is what they called it. then that's when you see Shredder shows up. Angel starts talking to April, says the only reason she's not dead or in jail is because of Casey, and says she will get the other purple dragons to help. Shredder's demanding they come out of hiding to get Casey, and then stabs Casey right in the abdomen.
That was the big cliffhanger.
Right in the gut, yeah. This sends... And it was important to notice, too, that Splinter quickly realized that this was a trap, that they got in way too easy. There's mention from Karai, I think, that the Foot were keeping a perimeter and letting them in, so to say. Splinter understands kind of what's going on, but as soon as Casey gets stabbed, that's Raphael just redlining. I mean, that's his brother in arms. That's his first family we've talked about a couple times. Splinter tries to stop him. The Foot attack. Karai and Alapex avoid the battle intentionally. Splinter and Leo try calming Raph to focus. Mikey and Donnie arrive by water next to Casey. Angel sees Casey. Splinter sends Leo to go help. And that's when he's isolated and Alapex attacks Leo out in the open. Yes, and that is when I realized that it was clear that this was all to get Leonardo.
Yeah.
They get Casey successfully, the team, and as they're getting away, Leo's hit or knocked out by Karai. They make it to the van as Casey's, is bleeding out at this point, and that's when they realize Leo is not there. So my question for you, Nolan, is when did you realize that this was about getting Leonardo?
Probably as soon as they revealed it, actually.
Really? Yeah.
I didn't think about it. I mean, I knew it was
that's something they laid,
yeah.
A long time ago. Like they started out a long time ago in Volume 2, right?
Yeah, I just didn't think about it. It's one of those things that I think it happened a lot last volume as well, where it's like, in hindsight, very obviously a trap to get Leo. But as I was reading it, it just didn't occur to me that was their plan.
I remembered that was a plan, but I didn't understand that this was part of that plan exactly. So to say, I think you're flipping the pages there in hardcover.
I don't know how
I was like, well, if you want to get the two of them, why did you kidnap the other two, right? But yeah, it became very apparent that that's what this was all about.
I think we sort of accidentally skipped ahead.
Did we a little bit?
No, mind.
We should be good, right?
I was wrong.
Okay.
Ignore me.
All good.
You can fire me as the co-host.
Okay. That's just a one and out kind of deal. Okay, cool. But I really liked this episode. There was a lot going on, a lot of things in play, a lot of tactics happening. And of course, we see Raph redlining as Raph does, right?
And him getting stabbed wasn't the cliffhanger. Him almost bleeding out and dying was the cliffhanger.
Right. Yes. Yeah. But what from an art piece though, like him getting stabbed in the abdomen. I mean, they really do lean into. I found it here for us. I mean, they take a full page for these really kind of jaw-dropping moments.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a little over dramatized in some regard, but at the same time, I love the art style being used for that moment. And there are moments where I've audibly gasped throughout this volume because of it.
Yeah.
So, great.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else on that one?
It was sad when Casey died. That's all I can say.
Did he die?
Yeah, he died to death.
Did he? Did he die? That was it. He's only got a 22 issue run. That's it. Yeah.
And I mean, they have him as the cover of volume 11, but that's an in memoriam.
That's what it is. Yes. Yeah. That's it. We got our first one shot of the volume. And we finally get to lay to rest. I know you're very excited to be right again. We finally get to lay to rest that it is not Hobbs. Yeah. I was thinking of his buddy Calvin, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very easily mixed up. But Hobb becomes a central character through the rest of this volume.
Yeah, I feel like he's become a little more interesting. Before, he was just kind of not quite mustache twirling, but borderline whisker twirling.
Whisker twirling.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now he's a little more interesting. He's not fully a villain, but not fully a hero.
Well, he's that Switzerland, right? Like that's how we're going to get into a little bit more detail, but he feels like he's trying to play everyone to his own devices kind of thing.
He's kind of like comic Loki, Marvel comic Loki.
Okay.
Not movie Loki.
Right. Okay. You could tell me more about that than I would know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it's a short one shot. You see a little bit about how he used to live indoors. Now, personally, as an animal lover, I have 2 dogs. I have a cat. To see this happen was like gut wrenching.
Yeah.
That was the worst.
I couldn't even imagine it. Like, I couldn't imagine. I have dogs as well, and
the worst.
Throws out an animal.
They were the worst. Yeah. So he used to live indoors with an owner. Apparently, this kid forgot to clean his litter box again, and the mother had it and threw him out on the street. The kid is pleading that he's gonna die out there, and she says it's your fault. Like, even if you hate the cat, like you're gonna like that is a long, very expensive therapy bill for that kid someday. So he becomes a stray. He learns how to fight for food, and then out of nowhere he latches onto a turtle, and that ooze mutates him. Say it with me. Ooze. Yeah. And he understands humans. Apparently, all of a sudden, he can speak English instead of I call it Catanese when my wife talks to my cat because she can understand. So
I think, Meandering.
Oh, that's a new one. I'm going to use that. So all of a sudden, he can speak English, and so he overhears Stockman and says that he would get the rat. And then all of a sudden, Stockman just looks at Hobb as a way to run tests. So he runs tests on him. Hobb is just kind of playing the long game here, and he gets Stockman to let him leave the lab. He builds up an army, fights his way into it, and it is revealed that he's telling this story to Slash at the end of this. We know that he was the one that pulled him up out of the Hudson. In New York, out of the sewer into the Hudson, which is one of the grossest places you can go swimming ever. My aunt does it. It's not good. Yeah, it's crazy. So he's telling this story to Slash, and we're going to talk more about this. But what a turn for Slash throughout this whole volume. And you just hear Slash say, "No more pain." And he has a bit of like, I am Groot, I think, going on a little bit, but very short, to the point, right? Hobb, it's actually revealed that Hobb actually says that he's a little bit jealous of Splinter and the Turtles for being a family in what they have. I thought that was an interesting like character moment. Yeah. And then out of nowhere, the army starts deserting. He goes back to Stockman. Stockman ends up shooting Hobb in front of Krang, but he's stolen Splinter's blood. Says they have big plans, and that's when the Turtles show up.
I couldn't tell.
And Hobb stops Slash from attacking. You couldn't tell?
I couldn't tell if... Did he get shot and the bullet hit the glass and that went on him? Or did he get shot and then he broke it and then it put it on him?
Couldn't tell you. I had the same confusion. It was one of those like, did it like catch the bullet, like stop it kind of things, or is he just a mutant and he can repair from bullet? Like he can take a bullet hit. Like I can't tell.
I think the ooze hitting him kept him alive.
What was that?
Ooze.
Yeah.
I think that hitting him was the reason he survived, but I couldn't tell if it was like a plot convenient or where he gets shot and it just hits him, or if he broke it himself.
Sure. Couple of twists here, being that the Turtles are showing up out of nowhere and Slash is not attacking them. Have no clue what that's about. That's
Yeah.
great. And the seeing his backstory, I always have trouble with villains' backstories. I don't want to feel bad for a villain. I just want them to do bad things and want to do bad things and are good guys. I want to know their backstories and I want them to do good and defeat the bad guys. That's like a very like, you know, sterilized version of like comic books and like heroes and stories in general. I know, but this backstory seemed a little bit like he seemed a little bit like a Big Lebowski kind of thing, like unfortunate place, wrong time, like the world happens to him.
Yeah.
And that informs how he tries to take control over everything now. And so that I could kind of get behind.
Yeah, I like when they flesh out villains. I don't think it's a justification for their villainy, more of just an explanation of it. I like that. I think it just makes for more interesting characters. But I'm mixed on this issue. I thought it was good, but I also feel like for the most part, it was an issue that was kind of pointless. Like, it's how you would expect things to play out is pretty much how he got to the point where.
Right.
So it was a fine issue. I just feel kind of like, eh.
Well, the important part is that last page.
Yeah. Really.
Right? We went through this whole backstory just to get to that last page as to like why they're there. But realistically, you can do without and read the main line.
I guess with this, thinking about it a little more, it does explain why he was able to get past his vendetta against Splinter
Sure.
and move to his vendetta against humans, because it kind of this is where that really happens.
Right.
Well, kind of. I mean,
Right,
the last volume when he gets shot, I think that was the.
Yeah, spoilers.
Yeah.
Spoiler for the spoilers. Yeah.
But I mean, I guess it's fine. It's probably more informative than I'm giving it credit for.
You're gonna get splinters from sitting on the fence so much.
That's true.
But let's get on to 23 here. So we issue 23. We have more of the City Fall. The rest of these issues are going to be the City Fall
Main issues, anyway.
Main issues, yes. So we're trying to get Casey to the hospital in time. They realize that Leo's gone. They have no clue where he is. They get Casey to the hospital, and Mikey and Donnie start looking for Leo and are to meet at the lair in 1 hour. I thought there was the art in this issue. So there are some stunning shots of Casey and Leo on parallel gurneys in two different places.
Yeah.
Kitsune is to perform a ritual on Leo. So this was the whole question, right? Like, how were they going to, even if they got Leo, even if you're right, how are they going to get Leo onto their side? And so it's Kitsune is to perform a ritual on Leo to basically brainwash him, right? And you start to see that Karai has been kind of pushed aside or dismissed twice in this issue. The Turtles do end up finding one of his katanas, and then a message from Hobbs saying that he could help. I thought that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so that kind of sets up the ending of the one old Hobbs issue.
Yeah,
there.
which I thought when I was reading it at first, I was like, why was this put here? This feels very weird, because I mean, I get why it was now.
Right.
But it was weird. Most of the time with the one-shots, the next issue will pick up right after.
Right
but
there.
This one, it was halfway through the issue before.
Right. Catching up with Leonardo, Kitsune begins like the brainwashing, and he's basically Kitsune is brainwashing Leo through looking at memories and changing things or altering things through those memories, showing him that Splinter was actually evil the whole time, and it was Shredder who was saving him. And Angel ends up telling April and Casey. Angel tells April, rather, that Casey and her go way back. They both lost their mothers, and they explain that Casey stopped Angel from getting into the gang too deep. And April and Angel go to see Casey. And this is an important moment for the rest of the volume. While April and Angel are standing over Casey's bed, they talk about what he's been through and the abuse that he endured from his father. And you start to see his father actually decided to show up to the hospital. I was about to step in, and Angel says that he deserves all the father deserves everything that Casey's frankly going through right now. Casey doesn't deserve to suffer, but his father does, and that's when his father leaves. And now we go back into the brainwashing, more twisted memories by Kitsune, with Shredder showing up. We even have the death of Slash showing up, the battle on Neutrino. So basically going throughout his memories and twisting all of them. And that's when we land sort of caught up, quote unquote, to the old Hobbs ending, where the Turtles and Splinter show up with Hobbs. Hobbs reveals that he wants to join forces to take on humans, and offers Leo's location as proof that he's serious. And that we end this issue with the culmination of the brainwash, and Leo joins Shredder and awakens. So a lot going on. As we've talked about in previous volumes, we're doing our very best to kind of capture and outline for you what's going on, even with all these little time jumps and different things going on. But again, they make a lot more sense visually on the page than they do in words. Yeah. So hopefully we're covering well for you all. But yeah, your thoughts on issue 23?
I have mixed feelings because I do agree about the paneling and the way it was laid out for Casey and Leonardo. I really like that. That
to me was stunningly done.
Yeah. I love that. I don't know how I feel. I don't love the story arcs of heroes temporarily becoming villains because of brainwash. It can be done well. And sure. I think ultimately it was. But going into it, I was kind of
skeptical.
Yeah. And so a lot of that brainwash stuff was kind of interesting, but it didn't do a ton for me. I found the old Hobbs stuff and them going to him was a lot more interesting for me.
Sure.
The moment, I really like the moment with Angel and April in the hospital with Casey and then his dad showing up. I don't necessarily love where that goes, but I liked that moment when I was reading it.
Yeah, that moment for me was like kind of strange, just kind of out of nowhere kind of thing, that he was showing up when it really mattered and he was trying, but didn't explain much more and frankly kind of let it simmer for a moment after that. And then just one more note on the parallel gurneys kind of thing. So as Casey's being brought into the hospital, Leo's being prepared for the brainwashing ritual with Kitsune, and they're on gurneys like side by side on the page, a bunch of different things. It's I thought that was once again amazingly done. The brainwashing was interesting for me because we know, I think like the more popular one done in the movies, right, was, your favorite Winter Soldier, right? Yeah. Brainwashed. This brainwashing was done to really, really make him believe and feel that he is on the right side now, going with Shredder, and Shredder being his master, because of like the altering of the memories. Yeah. Not just like altering like your belief system and things like that. It's like, no, your beliefs are now this because these memories are this way now for you. I thought that was kind of an interesting take on that.
Yeah, I could see that. I didn't hate it. I don't know. I don't love the story in general. I think it ended up working out, but I do feel like with this volume, so much happens in it, and I feel like some things reach conclusions and some things happen way too quickly. But, I guess that's besides the point for this specific issue.
Something to note in this issue, too, is the mixture of art styles that you have going on, because Eastman comes back to do some of the pages for the brainwashing and the memories. And you can see that distinct art style between sort of the mainline artist and then his style there. And I thought that was kind of an interesting use of that, for sure. And so we're going to head on into issue 24. So we have Shredder telling Karai to be ready. Casey having a conversation with his mom in the hospital. Really important for him as a character, kind of relieving him of his promise. And that's when he wakes up. Hobb and the Turtles make it to the hideout with Leo. Hobb insists that this is right. Donnie and Raph don't really trust him. Splinter wants to follow, even if there's a chance that he's here. And Mikey tries. This is such a moment. We talked, I think, in our last episode about Mikey just wants to love and be loved, and that was Splinter saying this to Raphael. And there are just a couple of those moments throughout this volume where that really lands in such an overt but done so subtly way, if that makes sense. And this is one of them. And so this is Mikey trying to get Slash to chillax, as he says, by giving him a candy bar. And so Slash now learns another word, and it says candy.
I love this stuff.
I thought it was so great, and it reminded me a little bit of Taka and Razar from the first movie. With
isn't it the second one?
I think yes, the second one. Sorry, specifically Taka. That he's like, that infant turtle like dinosaur looking thing. So I digress. But gets him to give him a candy bar. The turtles go on ahead. Hobb picks the locks of the warehouse, lets him in ahead, and then locks the door behind him. When I saw that happen, I was like, oh, of course he did. like of course he did, right?
Before we move on real quick to that, I think it was in that same moment. I loved where he had 2 candy bars. Michelangelo had 2 candy bars, but he could only give him one because he heard that chocolate's dangerous for dogs, and he was going to give it to Alopex.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so well done. Where are we here? Just making sure. So it's revealed that Shredder's waiting for them. Splinter tells Raph not to instigate and tells Shredder they will use all means necessary. Splinter, sorry. Let me rephrase. Splinter tells Raphael not to instigate, and he tells Shredder that they will use all means necessary to retrieve Leo. Shredder reveals that they are taking over the city and will finish the turtles, and says, "Your son is no more, Yoshi." Splinter attacks Shredder. Sword is met by Leo.
What I thought was crazy is when... this is a dumb joke. I was going to say...
We're ready for it.
Yeah, I was going to say... what I thought was crazy was when Splinter jumps and attacks him and he yells, "Yoshi!"
Oh, you read it. Fantastic. So Splinter attacks Shredder, and his sword is revealed is met by Leo. Calls Splinter a rodent and that he is not his son. Raphael jumps in, followed by other. Leo defeats all of them. Leo's stopped by Shredder. And says the rat is his. The rest are Karai's and Leo's. The Foot attacked, and the turtles are all cornered. I'll pause right there just before we finish this episode. There is currently about to be released, and they have announced a new Funko called Dark Leonardo. And a friend of mine, a friend of a friend, knows the artist that does the packaging for Funko and whatnot. And so that's where I first saw it, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool! Like that's a neat like design or whatnot." But what are they going to do? They're going to do dark Raphael. They're going to do dark Michelangelo, right? And I just kind of shrugged, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get it because I'm a completist, and I get all of them, and it's my blessing and my curse." But to find out that design is not only from this, but actually done rather faithfully in the Funko style. I was absolutely stunned with this full page that I have open right now, that it says, "I will not allow you to harm my master," and he's standing in front of Shredder looking at Splinter. I got chills when I read that. I thought it was amazingly done. And the design for Dark... So throughout the rest of this, I made a conscious choice in my notes here that I'm going to try my best to now call him Dark Leo, so you know when he's in that kind of brainwashed state, as we are, talking about this the rest of the of this episode. Just as the whole gang is cornered, Slash breaks in, asking for candy, more candy for Slash. They leave, but it is very apparent that Splinter is absolutely heartbroken. I thought they drew that incredibly well. And Hobbs explains that he is now square with everyone. Yeah, that it becomes apparent that Shredder he had promised Shredder to give him to give them up, but he also promised Splinter that he would get them there. So now he is once again Switzerland and owes nobody anything at this moment. Yeah. So that's where we land for this issue.
Well, I think it was also about just being on good terms with Shredder.
Right.
In general, because Shredder is going after the whole city.
Right.
So it wasn't just about getting even, it was just to get in the good graces.
Right, and just be, like, copacetic with everyone. Yeah. Everyone, and not owe anyone else. Yeah, I mean, this issue brought us, really kind of watershed moments, right? Like key cornerstone moments for this series. Dark Leonardo, that round head. I'm never going to be able to unsee it now that you've mentioned how circular the heads are, so to say. But the way he's drawn, and I think he's called. I think it's the Chunin. I think it's called. That's how I read it, or Chunin.
Yeah, I think I read it Chunin, but it might be Chunin.
Yeah, which is, as you're reading from context clues, basically the second in command. Yeah. Very important to note, he's taken Karai's spot. And that's what's kind of latent in the background right now, is that Karai's kind of been pushed aside.
This is kind of a side note. Am I crazy and remember, did they have a little bit of a romance, Leonardo and Karai, in the 2012 series, or am I thinking of something completely different?
It might be something different, but
I feel like I remember it, maybe as a reference to
next time on the Cowabunga Chronicles, we find out.
Yeah,
Actually, it's interesting you bring up Karai though. So in my day job, so my office is also where a lot of my collection is, and my background is all of my old comics, Turtles comics. And I met a new coworker this week, and after we kind of got business out of the way, so to say, she asked about my background, and this woman is Asian, and she goes, "Oh, Karai is my favorite character," and I was just so impressed that what a deep cut for someone to say that Karai is their favorite character. And I have a first appearance of Karai. She asked if I had a Karai action figure. I think there's only a couple out. I haven't gotten it yet. And she goes, yeah, I mean, Karai's a badass. She turns into a serpent. And I was like, when does that happen? I had no idea. I'm like, she turns into a serpent? I'm like, I'm going to have to look that up. But then I went on to explain to her that, this, especially this volume, you really start to see her cunning, and her, her command of the foot kind of come through. So let's hop into Alapex here. And we start out seeing Alapex breaking into a building, another conquering or conquest for the Foot and Shredder. But it's also of note that there are 4 turned ninjas and 4 foot ninjas that are turning to the other side, or another mob, or gang rather. Before fighting, I thought this was super interesting for Alapex. Before fighting these 4 turned ninjas, she hands them all the turtles' weapons and blindfolds herself, saying that she's going to win anyways. So this will at least make it fair and would be good practice. Saying that if they only fight with those weapons, she will fight blind. She ends up killing them anyways. Whatever, fun for everyone,
as one does.
Yeah, as a Arctic fox mutant does. Yeah, you do see just after that, Bebop and Rocksteady kind of show up in their one cell, and it just kind of in the background for a moment. Again, yeah. So that's like kind of the second time they've shown up in that way. Just after this, Shredder says that they need to go on a mission to Fairbanks, Alaska. I don't know if you've ever been to Alaska or Fairbanks. It is quite cold. But I have family that lives in southern Alaska. It's beautiful if you've ever been there. But apparently that's where Alopex is from originally. And while planting bombs on the lab that she was made in, memories from her pre-mutation come flooding back in. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking about some kind of foreshadowing later on. Now that we say that. But she senses something burning, and Shredder says this is her final initiation, that she's proud of her. And when that thing she senses burning is actually her previous family, or species of Arctic fox. She attacks Shredder out of outrage, saying she was loyal, but that he's destroyed her old life. And she actually drew blood from Shredder. I thought that was a really interesting point. Shredder reminds her of her place, defeats her quickly, but still seems to kind of respect her in some ways for doing so. She fully becomes Foot, wants to cut his head off and run, hand off and run, but there's nowhere to run in the middle of Alaska, so she decides to kind of bide her time. And so the ending of this one shot is her determined to fight her way back to his side, but ultimately knows that he's the bear. And I thought that was an interesting kind of analogy, that from her pre-mutated life, she was always worried about the bear being the apex hunter, the apex predator. And so she knows that she needs to kind of like pick her spot.
Well, didn't she say she does want to kill him, though, still? Like, the plan is to get to his side to kill him?
Exactly. Ultimately knowing that he's the bear, that he needs to, that she needs to be wary of him, and that kind of thing. So, quick thoughts on that one?
I love this issue. Like, this was probably my favorite of the villain issues. Slash was pretty good last time as well, and Stockman was good. There's a lot of good ones. But this is probably my favorite because I feel like it really added a lot more dimension to Alopex as a character. And I liked it a lot.
That galvanizing that happens, I think that's what was really interesting, right? And how it was drawn and the viciousness that came out so quickly, that she can kind of turn that on at any moment. I thought it was really interesting, but then you also see her sort of cunning, and slyness in a way to know that she needs to like kind of go this track for now, but have an ultimate end and goal.
My guess is she becomes a hero of some sort. I don't know. I know nothing about Alopex in this, but my guess is that's where she'll eventually become. Or maybe she'll join like old Hobbs or something, where she's kind of in the gray.
Yeah, I'm curious to that's what I wondered. Would she go all the way in on joining the Turtles? Would she end up with Hobbs? What does that look like? I wasn't really sure. I think we get a taste of that towards the end, but we don't really know where she ultimately ends up. We do have another one shot with Karai.
Is that right after?
Right after, yeah. We go right into another one. And it was interesting because this one is her kind of returning to her old master, concerned about her place in the Foot, not sure what to do. But we also get that little bit of backstory that she has disdain for her father not living up to what he has even said the Foot was. Her father's idea being that the Foot should just be lawyers and high-powered businessmen and things like that. And so she eventually, in her dad's study, finds the Ashi no Himitsu, I believe it's called, which is like which is the artifact from the previous volume, I believe, or part of it. And so she begins training on her own. And that's when Shredder visits her in a dream, and she promises to take back the foot and eventually bring Shredder back to life.
Also worth mentioning that Shredder cuts her in the dream, and she wakes up and has to cut.
Yeah, and as we're reading this again, I mean, between the memories flooding back, the things happening in a dream that show up in reality, definitely foreshadowing things that happen in the future here. And back to Karai talking to her old master, not seeing her place in the foot now that Leo is Chunin. Leo shows up, though, out of nowhere and says that the dojo is not adequate and tells Karai she only needs to do what he says. Leo instigates Karai into attacking him, and during their fight, Karai notices that he's a little slow, not understanding, maybe like pulling the punches a little bit. But she lets Leo win, and Leo reminds her of her place. And Karai decides to change Shredder's mind instead of killing Leo. Thinks that might be a better path. She vows to the teacher, though, to kill Leo, and she goes to recruit people. This is an interesting moment because this moment happens and then they just leave it and you don't hear about it again until another one shot. But the final moment here is that she's going to recruit people for the foot. It says that they all need to fight her, and the last two standing will win. And they're not sure what they will win or anything like that, but it seems to be a place within the foot. So, Karai, tell me about it, Nolan.
I don't actually have that much thoughts on this. It was fine. It was like, it wasn't great. It was kind of just typical villain backstory.
Villains being villain?
Yeah, it's just like, okay, her dad. Yeah. She didn't like how her dad did things.
Right.
Until she trained herself. It's like, it wasn't bad. It was just, it was necessary, I guess, to kind of put into perspective. I thought the stuff with Leo was kind of interesting, though it did feel a little jarring because I feel like throughout this volume, they don't quite give you a feel on how long it's actually been.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of time passes from the point he gets mind controlled to the ending of the volume.
Sure.
But I don't really feel like there was a gauge of how much time, so I thought that it was a little jarring, though I did like that moment. And the little setup was fun at the end for...
Right. The eventuality. Yeah. Even if I wasn't a fan of how they did it overall, I appreciated this issue setting up Karai as a master tactician and her overall villain mind for strategy and long game and things like that. That I appreciated for sure.
I still like Karai as a character. I mean, there's plenty of great characters whose backstories are not all that interesting.
Right.
But yeah.
Nolan's giving me the shrug, so I think we're going to go on to issue 25. Yeah. So we have issue 25, which is City Fall Part 4. We have the Cervantes attacking a foot shipment, and they are about to win until Leo shows up. They win, obviously the foot and Dark Leo, rather, win, and they send the Cervantes leader with a message not to disobey Shredder. We hop back in. It was kind of funny to see a video call, by the way, in this issue. But there's a video call from the hospital to Donnie and Mikey. And after that video call is where we get the first Casey and April kiss. It's the first one. Yep. Yeah. We hop to Raph on the hunt for Dark Leo, roughing up criminals for info, just kind of rattling anyone's cages. Back to the Zavates, they brought to like the mob families that they were not. It's brought to the attention that they aren't crazy about Victor's methods, and one boss ends up dead. Karai calls out Leo and Shredder for treating her like a common foot soldier in a lot of ways. Shredder talking to Kitsune, saying his weakness is not killing. So Kitsune senses that Leonardo's weakness is not killing, and that she needs more time for the brainwashing. And we haven't really talked about this in a while, but they are reincarnated, and Kitsune is kind of a vehicle of that, or in that kind of mystic way. Reveals that the connection to his past life is still strong. As long as the Turtles and Splinter live, they are a threat. The Savate send a war declaration to Shredder by cutting off a hand and saying war. We quickly cut to Casey's father. Seems like he wants to make things right. He has some crazy dragon tattoo on the back, which happens to match the outside of his house, which is where Splinter is heading to meet up with Hobb. And Splinter and Hobb make a deal to help, that Hobb will help rescue Dark Leo. Hobb said he needs proof he's serious. And I feel like that seems to be a theme for the rest of this volume, that like, I'm going to do this, but we're going to side quest it out first, so to say. But they need proof that he's serious. We cut to Raph jumping the crooked cops. Donnie and Mike hop in to stop Raphael from beating the crap out of that crooked cop. And interesting moment here where Donnie tells Raphael that he's out of control. And they start arguing, and they're about to fight, but then Mikey breaks them up, and he confronts Raph, and that's when he kind of backs down. And so to see Mikey have that hold that space was kind of interesting for me to see.
I really like that moment a lot.
Yeah. Just a little bit left in this issue. We have Raphael just coming out finally with some feelings and not just rage, saying that it's all his fault. Donnie and Mikey revealed to Raphael they wanted to give up looking for Raphael, but Leo insisted. So that was way back in volume 1. And so just showing how much Leo really does care for all of them. And of course, once again, they have still not figured it out, but for good, they decide that they need to work together. And so who would have thought? Shredder and Leo attack the Savates together with Alifex and Karai as backup. Alifex prods at Karai about being second in command and see how she feels about that. Says she has a plan just in case, and that is revealed to be Bebop and Rocksteady as the plan. Yeah. So a lot going on. As we always say, we're hopping around a little bit, doing our best.
Hobbing around.
Hobbing around. Yeah. Doing our best to tell this story as we're reading it, and of course give you our honest reactions. That Mikey moment, hopping in between the two of them, but also telling Raph to cut the crap, I thought was really interesting. That deal with Hobb and Splinter, not sure where that's going to go. I thought that was kind of interesting, the meeting of the captain's meeting almost. He's brokering this deal separate from the Turtles being there, right? To continue that sort of working understanding or relationship.
The moment with Casey's dad is so goofy to me. Like, it felt so out of nowhere, and it was...
Yeah.
And the tattoo. Have you seen Ben Affleck's tattoo?
Oh no, we're going to Batfleck. We're going to Ben Affleck.
He has like a huge tattoo on his back, and that's what it reminded me of.
Really?
And it's just like, it was so goofy, and the way he did it, he's like, not anymore, and then rips his shirt off. It was so dumb.
It was okay. So I appreciate the resolution that this character has, but yes, it seems to have come out of nowhere. And we've talked about the opposite, right? We've talked about the opposite where things have felt earned, and we felt the gravity of situation, and this makes sense. This feels the opposite.
Yeah, I feel like they hadn't even there wasn't even a slight mention of this, like him being this old guy, but he apparently was a big deal. Like,
yeah,
they didn't even mention, or maybe they did. I don't remember, but I feel like there wasn't even a mention of him being in the Purple Dragons. I didn't know he was connected at all.
Right, at all. I mean, there was mention that he was like, he runs with a tough crowd, right? Like the gambling debts and whatnot and that kind of thing.
But that's very much not the same thing.
Right. So speaking of everyone's favorite or not so favorite origin story, we have a one shot to tell you more about it because I think they understood that there's a lot of gaps to fill in. And it starts out with and used as like a narrative throughout this issue that Casey's father, his name is Arnold, has apparently quit drinking and is going to AA. And so he's talking through about all, his new life since this. Dark Leo shows up at one point, takes him to Shredder, who knows who he used to be, which is apparently he used to be the Hun. And talking even with Angel's father about how nobody would have messed with them back in the day and all these things. And Shredder not only emotionally gets him to buy into becoming the Hun again, and leader of the Purple Dragons, he also gives him the mutagen, which is the first thing. One, why I guess Shredder doesn't need the mutagen, but why in this case only does the mutagen only just make him bigger? I don't know. But he shows up, takes the Purple Dragons back. Kind of a chilling scene with him, like trying to almost choke out Angel and sparing her life. But it ends up being he's telling this whole story about how he's gotten clean, he's gotten sober, he's gotten a new job, he's gotten into management. And that's how he's explaining all of this to AA, and that he feels so great after getting his 1 month chip. But they don't know that all this terror that he's kind of gone through and the criminal underworld that he's gone through.
This is the goofiest, dumbest issue, I think, of the entire run so far. It was
so many questions.
It was so dumb. Like, him having to dye his hair blonde. Or was it already blonde?
No, he had to cut it and then dye, and then he had to look the part. Is what he was saying. Yeah.
Like, what? Why? Like, everything.
He looked like a wider version of Guile from Street Fighter.
I don't know much about Street Fighter.
Just like kind of that buzz cut Street Fighter, like military looking guy that just ripped.
And then like just him getting ripped with the mutagen, it was just like it reminded me of have you seen Scooby-Doo 2? What's it called? Mr. Incorporated?
I did not.
Well, anyway, at one point Shaggy takes this at one point Shaggy takes like a weird sort of mutagen or what have you and becomes super buff, and that's what it reminded me of. Huh. It was just so dumb. Like dumb. Everything about Hun is dumb.
It's very strange. Don't get me wrong, I'm holding faith. We've liked most everything else so far. Maybe in future volumes this builds out a little bit more, and maybe this makes a little bit more sense, but
I mean,
now it's just tough.
I did like some stuff they did with him and Casey later, but
I think that's what we were saying.
But that's about it. I feel like they could have done that in a much better and more interesting way.
Yes. Hopping into the main line again for one issue, we have one of the turtles. This actually confused me. It was not clear to me that this was Leo meditating. at the time, but he's meditating, and Shen, his mother, shows up and gives Leo some kind of gift. It looks like an orchid or flower. And he awakes, but the flower is there, right? So similar to Karai being visited by Shredder, and the cut comes to reality, the flower is there. And in that, the Shen is saying that he doesn't belong there. This is not his place. We cut to Raph seeing if Angel has their back, basically. And she explains that she has their back, but the Purple Dragons don't right now because Hun is taken over. This was a great moment. Mikey and Woody reconciling, right?
Yeah.
Him apologizing again in that whole love and be loved acceptance kind of thing. And that was really cool to see. And Woody says that he will bring Mikey around to some seedy places, so to say.
Because Mikey's going around and while I forget what Raph and Donnie are doing, Donnie is going to the one dude,
right?
And then with April, I don't remember what Raph was doing.
Raph's just kind of roughing people up, just trying to kick the can, shake some trees. So to say. That's what I got.
But Mikey is going to people they know and just seeing if they could get any information, just like see if their friends know anything or have seen anything, and that's
right
why he goes to Woody.
And Woody was just like, I thought that was a great moment for both of them.
Yeah.
Woody's being the one, as a reminder, Woody the one being the one friend that Mikey had that would leave pizza for them, but then didn't want to associate it with him anymore when Slash was around.
And do you think he had a pizza, just an extra pizza, or he screwed somebody out of a pizza? Because he hands Mikey a pizza.
I think he could deal with it. But, yeah.
They go off driving. What if he screws someone out of a pizza?
That's true.
That could be an origin story. Maybe,
that's the origin story we need.
Yeah,
Maybe that's why Hun was so upset. Maybe it was his pizza.
5 volumes from now, you'll be like, oh my gosh, that was the thing.
Where's my pizza? yeah. That's forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for a late pizza. That's true. So yeah, as you were saying, Donnie and April are going to see Harold, which is the scientist, #1 Kirby fan.
Yeah.
From the one shot that I wasn't a huge fan of, keeps coming back, of course.
Yeah.
Kind of eating my words here. And Donnie brings an interesting moment. He's trying to bring a tech advantage to their fight, doing what he does best. You see that the Sabates are prepping for a strike on the foot. And just as they are prepping, Dark Leo and Shredder strike their command center, take them out. And Karai and Alapex follow up right behind them. Dark Leo told them to wait behind, but they don't. They just keep coming. Splinter... at this point, it's clear that Hobbs wants Splinter to infiltrate StockGen to get a mutagen as a good faith mission for Hobbs. Dark Leo and Victor from the Sabates are fighting, and Dark Leo is about to kill Victor, but Shredder wants him alive. Victor then tries to shoot them, and this is an interesting moment where Shredder actually kind of saves Dark Leo's life. Kicks him out of the way, and then cuts off Victor's hand. Splinter is seen escaping with the ooze as Hobbs blows up StockGen. We also get an awesome moment where Raphael visits Casey, and Casey just tells him, look, man, it's not your fault. We're okay. Life happens, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Last we see Karai and Alapex are seeing Shredder and Dark Leo overlooking it reminded me of like a Lion King moment, like everything the light touches is your kingdom, like that kind of moment. Yeah. And Karai and Alapex are in the background watching this, making it very clear that they are definitely in second in command. We have a few more issues to power through here. Quick thoughts on that one?
I really love the moment with Raph and Casey. That was a great moment.
Necessary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, it was a good issue, but
Right.
ultimately,
I like that the side quest was kind of just contained to this. It was very quick, in and out of stock gen kind of thing.
Ultimately, I did like this. I like the moment where Donnie and April go to the one dude's house, and he almost turns them away because it was just supposed to be Donnie, but then April says some stuff, and I thought that was a fun little interaction. She made a little joke about, I forget what the joke is, but it's about being unseen or something. And
Yes.
Like, yeah.
And I think that was a, foreshadowing a little bit for her that she's underutilized, that they don't look at her as equals in some ways. And in that moment, she was very helpful.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to keep us moving. We have another one shot, which is our first formal introduction to Bebop and Rocksteady. And boy, are these guys numbskulls. They are absolute numbskulls. They are, if you like the 1987 cartoon version of Bebop and Rocksteady, these guys feel just like that spirit of how dumb they are. But I would also say there's something interesting behind them that is very akin to Mikey and Slash, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be a part of something bigger than them, want to feel important kind of thing. And so I think there's something interesting in that as I was reading, as you read their appearances through the rest of the volume. But it starts with them getting kicked out of a gang. It's not really clear which one it was. They say at one point they've been kicked out of all of them. They quickly get pulled into working for Shredder. And that's when you see that they won the last two standing fight from Karai and Alapex. They get to be mutants. There's a ridiculous moment where Rocksteady says he wants to be a dinosaur. And so he says, oh, it's a rhinoceros. Yeah, so that was great. And they become mutants, and they go on another proving mission, a little side quest with Karai. And there was a really funny moment, though, where they start talking about how cool Shredder must be and how they want to be his friend or whatnot. And the Foot Soldier reminds them that Master Shredder is no one's friend. But Bebop asks if he thinks that Shredder would have a problem with him having turtle shell shoulder pads. And that's directly from, previous iterations of them. So I thought that was pretty hilarious. Kind of literally a bowl in the china shop kind of moment here that Karai goes to meet with a gang leader to kind of get them to bend to their will and the Foot's will. And they are told to do absolutely nothing. They don't. They end up picking a fight with the rest of the gang outside. The gang leader comes outside to see this and then tries to make their escape. And Rocksteady figures out that he can just plow through walls, ends up missing her. I think it was a funny moment where Bebop and Rocksteady are looking at each other, kind of disagreeing about who almost got her and who didn't get her, so to say. Interesting moment, though, that they get shot at and, nothing happens to them at all. That there was no real reaction. And that's when they realize that all of that running through walls is not great for structural integrity, as we sit in a 100-year-old historic building. But the building implodes. They think they've killed Karai, but they did not. And Karai is ready to cut their losses with them. Six the Foot on them. The Foot almost kill them, but they win. And Karai is impressed that they still want to be a part of the Foot. So I can't say this is the most brilliant episode, one ever, but I caught myself laughing more than I have in recent issues.
Yeah, it was dumb, but unlike the Hun issue, it was kind of dumb fun, and it felt like intentionally dumb instead of unintentionally dumb.
Sure. Sure.
So-
Tell me how you really feel. Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. I don't love Bebop and Rocksteady. I think they're kind of fun.
Sure.
I would be interested in a serious take on them, but I get that's just not probably ever going to happen.
Right. I think this is the most serious you're gonna get just for content matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the levity of this, but it did like propel it forward in the sense that like this is Karai's like actual doing, like this is her little pet project, quote unquote. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Only a few more left here. We're back into the main line, which is issue 27's City Fall Part 6. We have Mikey and Woody delivering pizza to kind of unseedy places that Woody might know about. And that is when Mikey is told that they're not going to pay for the pizza because they're waiting to go to a foot meeting. And I thought it was a cool moment for Mikey to be able to attack and overpower a room on his own. We cut over to Angel actually trying to stick up to Hun, tried fighting him, and they were then broken up by the invite to that same meeting that Mikey had just heard about. Angel's thrown out of the Purple Dragons. Everybody wants to follow Hun at this point. We cut back to the lair, and Donnie is showing Raph the gadgets that he got. Raph ends up just saying, I don't really care. Even though he told them to do what they were all best at. He's sort of a Luddite with technology. He doesn't even understand what that word means. I thought it was kind of a funny moment. Mikey charges in saying he knows where Leo's going to be. We cut to Dark Leo daydreaming. And Shen trying to help Leo break out of the brainwashing slowly but surely. At this point, I'm not convinced that he is. He's going to, frankly, the way this is working. But Karaya sees Dark Leo wake up worried from this daydream or dreams. And so she's sensing that there's something going on. It's not actually sticking happening there. Angel visits Casey, and they both decide to go to help. He's magically cured. He jumps out of the hospital, and everyone arrives at the meeting place, which is an abandoned theater. There's that many people.
It's worth mentioning, I don't remember what issue it happens. Splinter breaks into StockGen for Hobb.
Yes.
And steals some mutagen, and then Hobb destroys at least that facility.
That lab.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we covered that in 2 issues ago.
Oh, maybe
in 26. Yes, it was a very understated thing, but yes, Splinter delivered the ooze.
I may have been completely spaced out.
It's okay.
So
we're going to land the spaceship over these last 3 issues. It's totally okay.
Yeah.
And we are at the abandoned theater because there's so many bad guys in New York City that we need a theater to hold all of them. Apparently, I thought that was kind of a funny choice. Let's see here. Everyone arrives at the theater, including the Turtles. And it's revealed that this is why Shredder wanted the Sabate leader alive to put him out stage and show what happens if you don't yield to Shredder and the Foot. And it's at this moment when death is in the air, quote unquote, that Shen shows up and starts talking to Dark Leo, saying that this is not his place. And it's at this moment that Turtles, Hobb, and Slash attack the building. And Donnie throws a car at the stage. Just happened to be on that side of the building, of course. But he's using his technology to throw things, large things, rather. And Splinter announces to Orokusaki that he has returned and he is not leaving without his son. Outside, now we have a huge battle, a little bit analogous to the Neutrino battle, where you have 2 fronts going on.
Yeah.
I think. You have Hun outside saying, I'm going to show you how it's done. And he shoots Hobb and then Slash. But then Casey and Angel show up, hitting the gun out of his hand. out of his hands. We're back to the stage. We have Shredder attacking Donnie, and then Donnie throws them back with his technology gun, like arm gun, as he's wearing it.
Yeah.
So then Dark Leo attacks, tells him to stop. They tell him to stop, and they don't want to hurt him, and they throw him back as well. And Dark Leo basically resolves and says he wants to hurt them. And it's at this point that Raphael tackles him. And there's a moment of him questioning the brainwash and sort of breaking down a little bit here.
I don't remember if you mentioned it. You could have. It may have been a space moment for me again. But did you mention how Karai goes to Shredder about him or mentions to Shredder that he won't kill, and then Shredder says something to Kitsune,
yes.
Kitsune, that maybe Karai's right and he should kill, but she goes like, you can't because it will mess up.
I think we mentioned that at one point, but I think you added some more detail or color to it. But
because that becomes really important and very quickly.
Yes, and the fact that that as long as the Turtles and Splinter are alive, they are a threat to Dark Leo staying Dark Leo.
And because the reason why Leo kind of doesn't go crazy, but kind of becomes disoriented and can't fight really for a bit is because the killing of the
Savate.
Yeah. Completely. That
definitely breaks down that brainwashing a bit there. But you can see him going in and out, kind of back and forth. Yeah. And I thought that was really an interesting moment. I think there's more in the next issue. Yeah. And Splinter announces that they need to remove him. Raph carries him out as Donnie plows the way forward. Shredder sees they're escaping and says, looks to Alapex and asks where Karai is. And that's when she arrives. Karai arrives with Bebop and Rocksteady. A lot going on here in this issue. But I had a hard time trying to keep up with the back and forth of where Leo was at and sort of the disorienting. That's probably intentional in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong. I just had a little bit of a difficulty with that. I didn't mind Donnie's tech. I thought that was used sparingly and appropriately.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
And they made it so there's a battery life, so it wasn't a complete invincibility or
get out of kind of thing. Yeah, for sure.
Was it this issue or next issue where Casey shows up?
Casey showed up and hit the gun out of Hun's hand.
Yeah,
but that's it.
Yeah,
really. Yeah. And so in next issue here we have two more, but this one really concludes this volume.
Yeah.
And we have Bebop and Rocksteady overtaking the Turtles. Outside, Casey and Hun are facing off. And they offer him an alliance. The Jones boys back together, so to say. And that's when Casey hits him with the bat saying that he has a new family. So that's like a clear, no, we're not playing the mind games moment. Shredder learns who Bebop and Rocksteady are from Karai, that they are Karai's doing. Dark Leo is still confused. Fighting with Bebop and Rocksteady continues. Raph tries to defending Splinter, but they're both thrown away, just as Karai gives the order to kill. April then crashes in with using Harold's suit, so to say, to help even the playing field. Shredder then makes one last ditch effort at getting Dark Leo's mind back. He hits him, and Splinter and Raph jump in, saying, you will not hit my son, right? Casey breaks a bat on Hun's arm. Just as Hun is about to defeat Casey, though, Angel hits his legs, and then he quickly overpowers her. So we're back at the throat of Angel with Hun. And just as Hun is about to kill her, Hobb has regained himself, so to say, or revived himself, rather, and ends up shooting Hun. Hun grabs Casey, but then Slash throws Hun into a car. And so that's kind of where we leave Hun at that moment.
There's a fun little moment where Hobb mentioned something like, what is it with humans and shooting me or something like that.
Yes.
I like that moment.
Yes, and there was the line where it was like no more pain, I think, again, from Slash as well at some point in this. So this was one of my favorite fights so far in this series was Raph and Dark Leo. Raph really showing his restraint again. I think it's one of the first times you really see it. I can't say it again. And showing him how he really does know him and really trying to get through to him. Reminiscent of the Rise TMNT, something similar happens in the Rise of the TMNT where Raph is actually brainwashed and they have to get through to him. And they're doing kind of the same thing, kind of pulling the punches a little bit and sort of choosing not to fight. And so that's kind of so far in this series kind of weird to see Raph choosing not to fight, right? And just as he says this is not the place for him, you see Shen show up behind Raphael, and that just completely breaks down the brainwash and disorients Leo into kind of like a oatmeal of a brain is how I looked at it. And interesting moment though is you see that happen. You cut away to seeing Shredder having Splinter in a headlock, and Splinter showing that he's lost. That even if you defeat me, you've already lost this. And it's at this point you see Shredder stabbing Splinter's foot or leg, and it's revealed that his leg is broken later. And it's at this point that Alapex, just as Shredder was going to really finish Hamato-Yoshi, Alapex leaps at Splinter and stabs Splinter. Shredder. Sorry.
It's because something happens and it kind of triggers something in her and she goes attacking. I forget what it was.
She was... So there was that interesting moment where Alapex actually visited with Kitsune, and she said the story of Kitsune was always interesting to her because she was also a fox. And Kitsune... this is the first time you hear from Kitsune that she might have their own plans as well, long-term plans, and tells Alapex that she needs to be cunning and sly. So she sees him as the bear to take down. Just as she's about to finish Shredder, Karai hits her traitorous cur, is what she says, and hits Alapex with an arrow. Leo is back, but they need to leave immediately. Splinter's leg is broken. Slash, Angel, and Casey break in. They get on the getaway truck with Hobb, and Hobb. Have you ever seen Cool Guys Don't Look at Explosions?
I've seen it, but
I feel like that's Hobb. Because he's now, within 3 issues, he drives away from a place and blows it up on the way, which injures Bebop and Rocksteady, who were, but leaves Hun alive as well. Very important here that later, Shredder spells out Karai's disobedience to her. She agrees that it's punishable by death, but then appoints her Chunin. Says that he made Dark Leo to test Karai, and that their bond is deeper than blood. And Leo ends up giving the black bandana to Slash before they leave.
I did love that moment.
That moment was disorienting, though, because he's like, wait, just 1 second. And you feel like he's going to run away or like, don't touch me or whatever.
Yeah.
And then that's what he was actually going to do. But this moment where Shredder admits that he failed in some ways, but then tries to save face by saying this was all my plan and everything. I didn't know if I really bought that.
Yeah, I could see what you mean. It didn't bother me. I guess, and when it comes to that moment, I don't love the moment because I felt like Leo giving the bandana felt a little weird.
Yes.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. He did stab him earlier, right? It was him who killed him. So
Yes.
I guess it makes sense, but I did like that. I didn't like this. I don't know how to say. It's worth noting that, like you said, when Splinter says, "I'm glad to have you back, son," he's about to touch Leonardo, and he kind of freaks out. Leo kind of freaks out, and that's when he goes.
Yeah, I got worried.
Yeah.
I was like, what now, right? But this battle, if this is like how the arcs are all going to go, I'm here for it. I mean, we have the Shredder Splinter first face-off in Volume 1, Volume 2, the battle in Neutrino. And this battle, to me, feels paced they all feel paced very similarly. Again, I feel that same sort of like anticipation and anxiousness, so to say, as I do like watching a great like film or something like that. Again, the animation style, the drawing style, it works. I think it's fantastic.
And it's seeming like next volume they're gonna do the going to the farm to hide out storyline.
I wondered that. Yeah, I wonder if that's where they're going, the farmhouse. Yes.
It's a very different way to get to that point, I feel like. Usually it's Leo or someone getting hurt to the point of, like...
Yes, and they has to be revived there or something like that. Yeah.
So,
we'll see where they go.
Yeah,
for sure. One last issue is another one-shot. It is Shredder. Saying that there's no signs of the turtle. Kitsune asking him where his soul went when he died. And he tells this story that it seems to be some type of afterlife realm. He, being Shredder's going to do Shredder things. He looks to build an army and conquer the ruler. He tried to defeat everyone to gain control, but then realized that fighting is all they really wanted to do. And since they're in the afterlife, they got all the time to do that. So instead, he rallies them to fight with him. And as they are fighting, he slips into the castle. He defeats the ruler samurai. The samurai says, "I thought I could defeat you." As the samurai is thrown to the crowd, they then remove his mask to show that it was actually him, but an older version of him. And they explain that this will be him for all of time until he defeats himself. And is the end of the issue is that he plans to win the battle against his younger self eventually. So not seeing his own hubris is what's getting in his way. In some ways, this was a weird episode for me. It reminded me a little bit of Korg, like it's a freaky circle, like kind of thing, like just over and over again, like that's what he's going to be trying to do. You weren't sure if it was an afterlife, if it was because there is like the Shredder in Hell storyline that we haven't gotten to yet, and so I wasn't sure about this issue. I mean, it goes on to say, like, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out he plans to win the battle against his younger self, but isn't that what the old guy was planning to do, right? Too. So a little bit of like, okay, you don't see that kind of thing. So what are your thoughts on this last issue of Volume 3?
It was all right. I mean, it was kind of interesting, but at the same time, I felt like it didn't do much for me. It felt kind of throwaway. It could very well become important.
We've had to swallow our words already.
Yeah,
that is for sure.
I mean, it's probably like there's allegory there about Shredder and how he is, but it was fine. I mean, it was
a wait and see. That's why I put
it was a wait and see. Yeah. But it also, the story felt like it was over at this point, and it just was kind of like a little. That. Also, real quick, I forgot to mention it. It was weird that in the Alopex issue, he gets scratched, and then when the story continued, you never see a cut or scar from him.
Sure.
It's fine, but I was going to mention that earlier, and I didn't.
He says real quick, but we are an hour and 45 minutes into this episode. If you are still listening, we so appreciate you. This is definitely longer than we than we intend to go, but this is a 400-page volume.
Yeah.
So definitely one of the bigger volumes.
You try doing a podcast about a 400-page volume.
You try. So we thank you for listening. We really hope you're enjoying this. Once again, if you're not enjoying this, our names are Craig and Shane. If you are enjoying it, I'm Chris, and this is Nolan. Thank you all so much for listening. Write in. Let us know if you have any questions or what you think about it, about how we're doing. And if you're reading along too, we want to hear your reaction. We'd love to bring it up in a future episode. Let us know. So with that, Cowabunga.
Cowabunga.
The Cowabunga Chronicles is sponsored by StockGen Laboratories, hosted by Chris and Nolan, and produced by the Arcade Comic. If you are interested in the TMNT IDW collection or pulling the new Jason Aaron TMNT series that releases July 10th, both are 20% off and include free bags and boards. Be sure to pull the series before final order cutoff only at the Arcade Comics on East State Boulevard in Fort Wayne, Indiana.